you are incredibly diverse. I'm really struck by the fact that you look like our city. And so many, many congratulations to the organizers. I'm trying to figure out the links between diversity and prosperity. In particular, the links between global migration, and you are a product one way or another of a society that embraces migration, and prosperity. I'm not going to be a pure academic in the sense of academics. We will be, yeah, I've been given my directions. We will be both a think and a do tank. But today I want to talk to you about rewiring ourselves, our brains, our being, the way we think, so that we can truly be part of a new world order. So I'm a huge believer in telling stories. And I think nothing tells stories as well as the personal stories. So I'm going to tell you my life story because my work is very much predicated in my life story. I was born in, guess, where was I born? In India, yes. I was born in India, where I had a very typical middle-class Indian upbringing. I was sent to boarding school. My favorite writers were Hardy, Dickens, Shakespeare, and the like. And then I went to, take a guess, where's that? Bavaria. Wo ist das? Das ist in Deutschland. I went to study in Bavaria, in Munich. In those days, that was West Germany. And I have a very particular fondness for the Alps because while I was hiking in the Alps, and yes, I used to hike many years ago, I met my future partner who, like me, was a foreign student. And then we traveled across Europe to Iran, where he was from. And those of you who know that part of the world will know that monument is very much the symbol of modern-day Iran. But when we went to Iran, there was one kind of political order in 1975. And by the time we left, there was another political order. And I'm not going to do a political deconstruction of what happened in Iran, only to say that we got caught up in it. And you know, as ordinary citizens, you don't believe that the revolution will come knocking at your door one night. But that's precisely what happened. The revolution came knocking at our door one night. We had to pack our bags. We had to leave. We had to flee. We had to flee for our lives. And this experience of flight has stayed with me forever. And there's one moment that stands out in my memory more than any other moment. We are in northern Iran. The airport in Tehran has been bombed. We cannot leave. So we have to take this bus. I have a one-year-old daughter who insists on crying the whole journey through. How many of you are parents? One. You know what I'm talking about, yes. You know what I'm talking about, yes. So she insists on crying. We get to the border between Turkey and Iran, and we want to get to the other side. And we are in a room like this, not as attractive, with not so many lights. And we're on one side, and there is a portrait of Khomeini on one side. And we want to get to the other side. And on the other side is a portrait of Atatürk. And we want to get there. And I say to myself at that moment, and we're surrounded by soldiers of all kinds, from all Turkey and Iran, whatever. And the soldiers are looking really threatening. And we have our baby. And we have some stuff with us that we shouldn't have because, after all, a family needs money, and we've hidden it in the milk powder in the tin. They take away the milk powder. They do all that. And I say to myself, dear God, I will never ask you for anything else. Never. Get me to the other side. And we did get to the other side, and I have broken my promise many, many times because I am a mere mortal after all. But one thing has stayed with me, it's that experience. And when things get really difficult, as they tend to do, I try and remember that moment. So much so that I am writing a book with my colleague Dana Wagner, and it'll be published in September. It's called Flight and Freedom. It's about stories of flight, far more dramatic than my little story of flight. Capturing those stories of flight, figuring out what happens to them, and hopefully generating some interest in the minds of the reader. So anyway, you want to get to the story. I got to Canada, right. And I was totally unprepared for Canada. I was unprepared for the fact that the people were so, tell me what? Polite. Yes, someone got that. You couldn't figure out what they meant. Did they mean yes or no? Did they like me? Did they not like me? I couldn't figure it out. I was totally unprepared for the many different versions of winter. I'm still unprepared for it. I don't quite know how many coats we need to have in this country. It took me as a huge surprise that schools were free. Healthcare was free. I was moved to absolute tears when I went to this place the first time. The magnificence of nature in this country, I think we don't really grasp as much as we should. And there were some things that I found really easy, like navigating the TDC, getting a driver's license. All those things were really easy, but there was one really, really sticky part, and that was getting a job. And I remember some really well-meaning advice that someone gave to me almost in the first week I came. He was a very successful Canadian immigrant. His name was Ashok, but he called himself Ash. And he said to me, Ratna, you must change your name. You must change your name because nobody will remember it. It is too strange. And then combined with your last name, which has too many vowels and syllables, whatever, they will not want to take a look at you. And by the way, I just want to share with you, this is statistically true. In a study done by a professor at University of Toronto this year, he found that with a name like John Smith or Kurt Vermont, you know, let's just say Kurt Vermont is more likely to get in front of a hiring committee or a search committee than Ratna Omidvar. Far more likely. So this was 30 years ago, and he said, you must change your name. And I thought about it, frankly, and I thought about it for a very long time, and I threw around some names in my head, Rita, Rosa, whatever. But I couldn't do it because my name is my name. It's part of my personality, my identity, and so I decided not to change it. But I did change something very, very important. I realized fairly quickly that nobody in their right minds would want to learn German, and that's what I'm technically qualified for. I'm a teacher of German as a second language. Jawohl, ich kann ja sehr gut Deutsch sprechen. I said, nobody in their right mind in Canada, in Toronto, is going to want to learn German from an Indian who has come from Iran as a refugee. So I gave that up. I reinvented myself. Remember I said to you in the mixer, reinvention is part of our narrative. So I reinvented myself, and part of that reinvention story is what brings me to you today. But one of the things I learned very quickly in my first few moments, first few years in Canada, was how do you spot a Canadian? How, and this incredible politeness, I figured out was partly a personality trait that I have now, by the way, fully embraced, is fear of being considered intrusive. So where I come from, hello, how are you? Where do you work? Where do you live? How much did you pay for your house? Who do you report to? And worst of all, how much do you earn? That's part of my DNA. I learned to suppress it. And when I go home now and people ask me those same questions, I always say, frankly, I don't earn enough. How much do you earn? And I'm a little embarrassed by that. But I do want to say one thing. Much as I had a hard time in the first few years figuring out the Canadian personality, I'll be the first to admit this is the best country in the world to live. And because you are, most of you, and I won't point out the exceptions. Most of you are really young, which I think is wonderful. You're like my kids. My kids today embrace the best parts of their narrative. They are Indian, they are Iranian, they are German, but most of all, they are Canadian, like you. And they are entirely comfortable, I believe, eating sushi or samosas, watching Hollywood or Bollywood. Their friends are from all over the world. They are in mixed relationships. And again, to throw in a statistic, because I like to work with evidence, a full 25% of unions in this city under a certain age, 30 and under, are mixed unions. So I firmly believe if everything else fails, love and sex will solve our problems for us, yes. But I want to leave you with, out of this personal narrative, what do I want to share with you? First of all, I want to share with you the fact Canada has a global soul. It is made up of the narratives of many people. First of all, it's made up of the most important narrative of our First Peoples. It's made up of the narratives of those Ukrainians who came from Ukraine in 1906 to become farmers in Manitoba. It's made up of the narrative of the British orphans who were resettled here after the Second World War. It's made up of the narratives of the Italians who came to Canada thinking the streets were paved with gold, only to find out there was no gold, there were no streets, they had to pave them. It's made up of the narratives of people like you and me, people who've come from India, the Philippines, Iraq, Afghanistan, China, Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, Latin America, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And some people say, when will this ever end? And the truth is, it will never end. Canada will always be a work in progress. It will never be a finished product. So that's our global soul, constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly able to absorb new ideas and reinvent itself in ways that other nations are not able to. My second observation is that because of all this ebb and flow of people, diversity is in our DNA. We know it and experience it in a different way. I look at you and I see that. But this does not mean that we are immune from some of the biases that are part of human makeup. Everybody has a bias. I have a bias. You have a bias. I'll share my bias with you. You can see that I'm a vertically challenged woman. You can see that I'm highly energetic. And guess who I hire? Take a guess. Who do I hire? Women who look like me. Yes. I have recognized that. I have brought a colleague with me, by the way, who is much taller than me, just as a way to demonstrate that I have overcome my bias. But you only overcome your biases if you recognize them first. And one of the biases that I want to talk to you about is the propensity we all have of liking people who are like us. Yes. So we tend to do this. Yes. We tend to do this. And what does this do? It's very interesting, and I'm quoting a Harvard professor, Dr. Banerjee, who found in her research that because we are humanly, what's the right word, wired to think about people who look like us, we don't discriminate against people who are not like us. We discriminate in favor of people who are like us. So we want to hang out with people who look like us. We want to mix up with people who look in the metaphorical sense, maybe not in the real sense. And most importantly, we want to include people who look like us in our teams. And this costs us an incredible amount of innovation, because we know, and I don't want to quote the research studies to you, diversity, innovation, new ways of solving old problems, new markets, new customer bases. This is all part of the narrative that we must also embrace. So this is a real problem that I want to get to at some point. Now, in further research, and here's what I find in my conversations when I talk to people, you know, you need to be a little bit like the neutral. Oh, yeah. I have the one South Asian. Oh, no. We have a Chinese person working for us. Okay? Or I have a gay or lesbian person working for me, and that's supposed to be enough. So we did some research, and what did we find? In a group of 10, if one person is different, however you define that difference, they are considered a token, whether they are or not. So if you're the one woman in your team, careful. If you are two, yes, if you are two, the two of you are viewed as an interest group working against the rest. So 2 women against all the men. 2 minorities against all the men. It's when you get to 3. It's not 1, but 2 and 3 that makes it actually work. So I want to leave that idea with you. So in conclusion, this is what I have learned. You have to rewire yourself. You have to be proactive about understanding your biases. You have to include other people. And as much as you have to do things, the other side also has to do things. Inclusion is a two-way street. It's not just me who's changing. It's you who's changing as well. And this brings me, because I don't want to take up time from the lecture, I want to talk about a leadership opportunity for you. You're all young people, most of you, and there is an incredible leadership opportunity waiting for you to take your place around the tables that exercise public, that engage in public governance in the public good. There are hundreds of organizations, volunteer organizations, charities, and public organizations that require citizen volunteers. So these range from the Turtle House, which is a children's charity, to the Sick Kids Hospital Foundation, which is a big mainstream organization. It ranges from the Boys and Girls Club to the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. None of these function without the participation of citizen volunteers. And what did we find when we did some research? These people around the boardrooms of our city look like old Canada. They don't look like you. And what I'm suggesting to you is even in your early careers, you're clearly on the upward track because you're here at Tuni Talks, and I love that. Even in these early stages of your career, think about a board that you want to sit on. We have the names, we have the contacts, we can help you get there. But more importantly, perhaps, there is a leadership resource that will help you get upscaled to sit on a board. So you're not going into a boardroom as a new board member without the skills, the expertise, because it's not like being a staff member. You are actually bringing your technical and professional competencies to serve the public good in another context. We have this resource. My colleague Kathy Winter is here today with me, and she'll be happy to talk to you about how you can get involved in the citizen building process of this wonderful city of ours. So I'm going to leave it right there. I want you to follow me because I don't know, why do I want you to follow me? I don't quite get it. Okay, I want you to follow me because I want to talk about ideas. I want to talk about not diversity at an aspirational level. I know that we say in this city diversity is our strength. I'm not quite sure what the city means by that. I'm more interested in giving the diversity conversation legs to action, and that's what I'm about. So thank you very much.